From the outside, my life with Olivia appeared flawless, a picturesque marriage built on love, success, and family. I was the calm, practical businessman who valued loyalty and trust, while Olivia thrived in high society circles, commanding attention with her charm and elegance. Our children, Lily and Ethan, were away on holiday with my parents, giving us a rare moment of solitude. It seemed like the perfect opportunity to reconnect as a couple, or so I thought. When Olivia suggested a vacation, I was surprised. "It'll be good for us," she said with that winning smile of hers. "Just the two of us. A chance to relax, unwind, and rekindle what we have." Her words were convincing, but I noticed the subtle impatience in her tone, as if she were waiting for me to agree without question. And I did. How could I not? Trusting Olivia had always been my default setting, and besides, she was right. We deserved a break. She took charge of planning the trip, insisting she knew exactly what we needed. "I'll handle everything," she said with a wave of her perfectly manicured hand. I didn't argue. Olivia had a way of taking the reins and making it seem like she was doing me a favor. Truthfully, I was relieved to have one less thing to think about amidst the chaos of running a business. The weeks leading up to the vacation were a whirlwind of her excitement and my quiet anticipation. She spent hours researching resorts, booking spa packages, and shopping for vacation outfits. I simply nodded along, letting her enthusiasm carry us both. I reminded myself that this trip was her way of trying, of showing she cared about our relationship. But as the departure date approached, I couldn't shake a nagging feeling. It wasn't anything concrete, just a sense that something was off. Olivia's excitement seemed almost too rehearsed, her insistence on handling every detail unusually firm. Still, I dismissed my unease. Doubting Olivia felt disloyal, and I wasn't the type to second-guess my wife. When the day finally arrived, I watched her pack with an efficiency that spoke of experience. "Are you sure you've got everything?" I asked, half joking. "You've packed enough for a month." She laughed lightly, brushing off my comment. "You know how I am. Always prepared." As we headed to the airport, I allowed myself to relax. Maybe this was exactly what we needed, a chance to reconnect without the distractions of daily life. I looked at Olivia, radiant and confident, and reminded myself why I fell in love with her in the first place. The flight was smooth, and Olivia spent most of it scrolling through her phone, occasionally glancing at me with a distracted smile. I didn't mind. I was content to sit quietly, imagining the serene beaches and peaceful days ahead. For once, I let myself believe that everything was as perfect as it seemed. When we arrived at the resort, Olivia's face lit up with excitement. "Isn't this stunning?" she gushed, gesturing to the grand entrance and the crystal-clear view of the ocean. I nodded, genuinely impressed. The place was luxurious, far beyond what I would have chosen for myself, but I didn't mind splurging if it made Olivia happy. As we checked in, she leaned into me, her voice low and conspiratorial. "This is going to be amazing, David. Just you wait." Her words felt reassuring, and I let my earlier doubts fade. For the first time in a long while, I felt optimistic. Whatever issues we had, this vacation felt like a step in the right direction. Little did I know, the perfect start was nothing more than an illusion, a carefully crafted facade that was about to shatter in the most unexpected way. The resort was breathtaking, the kind of place that graced luxury travel magazines. The expansive lobby gleamed with polished marble floors, towering glass windows offering a panoramic view of the turquoise ocean. A welcome drink in hand, I allowed myself a moment to absorb it all. Maybe Olivia was right. This vacation could be the fresh start we needed. That's when I saw them. "David, look who's here!" Olivia exclaimed, waving enthusiastically. 3 women, Clara, Fiona, and Melissa, strode toward us, their designer sunglasses perched atop perfectly styled hair. Their energy filled the room like a tidal wave, all high-pitched laughter and exaggerated greetings. I blinked, confused. This was supposed to be a couple's getaway. Olivia hadn't mentioned anyone else joining us. Clara reached us first, pulling Olivia into a tight hug. "Liv, you look amazing. I can't believe we're finally doing this." "This place is incredible," Melissa chimed in, her eyes sweeping the opulent surroundings. Leave it to Olivia to pick the best. I stood there, an outsider in what was clearly a prearranged gathering. Olivia turned to me, her smile wide and bright. David, you remember Clara, Fiona, and Melissa, don't you? I nodded politely, although I barely remembered them from past social events Olivia had dragged me to. Isn't this wonderful? Olivia said, slipping her arm through mine. We can all relax together. It'll be so much fun. Fun. Right. That was one word for it. The group gravitated toward the plush seating area in the lobby, where drinks and appetizers were already waiting. I trailed behind, still processing the fact that this wasn't a trip for two. As the women settled in, their laughter filled the air. Olivia was in her element, the center of attention, effortlessly steering the conversation. I tried to participate, but every attempt to contribute was met with polite indifference or redirected back to Olivia. Then came the subtle jabs. David, you're so lucky Olivia handles everything, Fiona said with a sly smile. I don't know how you'd manage without her. I mean, let's be honest, Clara added, swirling her drink. Olivia's the real powerhouse, isn't she? Running the household, keeping up with us, and still finding time for you. They laughed, and I forced a smile, masking the sting. Olivia didn't defend me. In fact, she leaned into the narrative, casually boasting about her connections and accomplishments as if I were an afterthought. Well, someone has to keep things running, Olivia said, raising her glass. David's got his business, but I'm the glue that holds everything together. The women cheered, raising their glasses in a mock toast. I sipped my drink in silence, wondering how I had ended up here. As the evening wore on, the conversation shifted to extravagant vacations, designer brands, and social events I had no interest in. Every now and then, Olivia would glance at me, her smile a mix of amusement and something else I couldn't quite place. Was it satisfaction? At one point, Melissa leaned forward, her voice low but not low enough. You're so lucky, Liv. Most guys wouldn't fund a trip like this. Fund? My grip tightened on my glass. Of course, I'd agreed to pay for the trip, but hearing it framed this way felt off. Olivia laughed lightly, brushing off the comment. Well, David understands the importance of treating me right. Don't you, darling? I nodded, keeping my expression neutral. Of course. Inside, something shifted. This wasn't a couple's getaway. This was Olivia's stage, and I was just a prop. When the gathering finally broke up for the night, I felt more like an outsider than ever. Olivia seemed oblivious, chatting animatedly with Clara as we made our way to the front desk to check in. Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. Bennett, the receptionist greeted us. Your party's rooms are ready. Party. The word hit me like a slap. As the receptionist handed over the keys, I noticed something strange. All the rooms were registered under my credit card. Every single one. Excuse me, I said, my voice calm but firm. There seems to be a mistake. I only authorized one room. The receptionist glanced at Olivia, who stepped in smoothly. Oh, it's fine, David. I arranged everything. Trust me, it's easier this way. I turned to Olivia, waiting for an explanation. Instead, she handed me a single key. Here's your room, she said casually. I'll be staying with Clara tonight. We just have so much to catch up on. Before I could respond, Fiona chuckled. She needs her space, David. Don't take it personally. The others laughed, and I felt my face heat. Olivia handed the rest of the keys to her friends, who accepted them without question. We reserved rooms only for the elites, Melissa joked, grinning at me. It was then I realized how thoroughly I'd been played. This wasn't a vacation for us. This was Olivia's show, funded entirely by me. I looked at her, my expression unreadable. Enjoy your evening, I said evenly, pocketing the key. And then, without another word, I walked out of the lobby. I stepped outside into the cool evening air, the laughter of Olivia and her friends still echoing in my ears. The resort was stunning under the glow of the setting sun, but its beauty felt hollow now, tainted by the sting of betrayal. I stood there for a moment, breathing deeply, trying to suppress the storm brewing inside me. I wasn't the type to cause a scene. I never had been. But this was a level of disrespect I hadn't anticipated, even from Olivia. Walking back inside, I decided I needed clarity. Maybe there had been a misunderstanding, a miscommunication. I approached the front desk again, where the receptionist offered me a polite smile. "Mr. Bennett, is there something I can assist you with?" "Yes," I said, my tone steady. "I noticed all the rooms are under my credit card. Could you confirm the total booking details for me?" The receptionist hesitated for a fraction of a second before typing on her keyboard. "Of course, sir. There are 4 rooms reserved under your name, all charged to the card on file. Is there an issue?" "For rooms charged to me." I clenched my jaw, nodding slowly. "No issue. Thank you for confirming." I stepped away, my thoughts racing. Olivia hadn't just invited her friends on this trip. She had funded their entire stay on my dime. And the fact that she hadn't bothered to mention it, that spoke volumes. Making my way to my assigned room, I tried to calm down. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe Olivia had intended to tell me but had been waiting for the right moment. Maybe. I opened the door to my room, a standard suite that was perfectly fine but noticeably less luxurious than what I'd glimpsed in the other rooms during check-in. Another detail that didn't escape me. Dropping my bag onto the bed, I sat down and rubbed my temples. I needed to talk to Olivia, to hear her explanation, even if I already had a sinking feeling I knew exactly how this conversation would go. Gathering my resolve, I left the room and headed to the suite where Olivia was staying with Clara. The door was ajar, and their voices spilled out into the hallway. "David's probably sulking right now," Olivia's voice floated out, light and dismissive. Clara laughed. "You don't have to explain yourself to him. He's lucky to even be here. Honestly, Liv, you're too nice sometimes." "Oh, please," Olivia replied. "David's harmless. He knows better than to make a fuss. Besides, this is my trip. He should just be grateful I let him tag along." The laughter that followed hit me like a physical blow. I stood frozen in the hallway, anger and humiliation warring within me. Grateful? Let me tag along? Was this really how she saw me? Taking a deep breath, I stepped back and returned to my room. Confronting her in the middle of her little audience would only give her and her friends more fuel to mock me. No, I needed to think this through. Later that evening, Olivia returned to the room briefly, her expression casual, as if nothing had happened. "David," she said, her tone breezy, "I'll be staying with Clara tonight. You don't mind, do you?" I stared at her, my voice calm but firm. "Mind? Not at all. Enjoy your evening." She gave me a brief smile, clearly mistaking my composure for acceptance, and left without another word. As the door clicked shut behind her, I sat down on the edge of the bed, staring at the space she had just vacated. How had we gotten here? How had the woman I once loved and trusted turned into someone who could treat me with such disdain? The answer didn't come, but my decision did. The next morning, I packed my bags and checked out of the resort without a word to Olivia or her friends. As I handed the receptionist my room key, she looked surprised. "Leaving so soon, Mr. Bennett?" "Yes," I replied evenly. "Please ensure all remaining charges to my card are canceled immediately." The receptionist nodded, sensing the finality in my tone. "Of course, sir." Walking out of the resort, I didn't feel regret. I felt relief. Olivia had made it clear where I stood in her life, and I wasn't going to stay where I wasn't valued. I slipped my phone out of my pocket, opened my banking app, and began canceling every card connected to Olivia's spending. Then I made one more call, to my lawyer. "Mr. Bennett, how can I help you?" "I'd like to begin drafting divorce papers," I said, my voice steady. "Today." The drive home was quiet, the kind of silence that forces you to confront every thought, every doubt, every simmering emotion. I'd replayed the events of the past 24 hours over and over in my mind, each detail sharpening my resolve. Olivia's betrayal wasn't just about the money. It was about the lack of respect, the mockery, the complete disregard for the partnership I thought we shared. When I pulled into the driveway, the house greeted me like an old friend, a stark contrast to the false luxury of the resort. It felt good to be home, a place that had always offered me comfort and stability. But even this space now carried traces of Olivia's manipulation. I went straight to my office, shutting the door behind me. The room was my sanctuary, lined with bookshelves and a large oak desk where I had made countless decisions that shaped my business. But this decision felt different. It wasn't about contracts or clients. It was about reclaiming my life. I opened my laptop and logged into our joint accounts. The numbers stared back at me, a grim reminder of how deeply Olivia had benefited from my trust. With a few keystrokes, I froze every account she had access to, ensuring she wouldn't be able to spend another dime without my knowledge. Next, I called the credit card company. The representative on the other end was polite, almost too cheerful for the gravity of what I was doing. "Yes, I'd like to cancel all cards associated with my account," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Immediately." "Of course, Mr. Bennett. Is there a specific reason for the cancellation?" "Fraudulent activity," I replied without hesitation. The word tasted bitter in my mouth, but it was the truth. Olivia had abused my trust, and I wasn't going to let it continue. Once the financials were secured, I turned my attention to the divorce papers. My lawyer, Rebecca, was efficient as always. "I'll have the first draft ready by tomorrow," she assured me. "Do you want to include any stipulations regarding the house or other assets?" "Yes," I said firmly. "The house stays with me, and I want to ensure custody arrangements are fair for the kids. They don't deserve to be caught in the middle of this." Rebecca agreed, her tone professional yet empathetic. "Understood. I'll make sure everything is in order." By the time I hung up, the weight on my chest had lessened slightly. I was taking control, piece by piece, and it felt empowering. Meanwhile, I imagined Olivia back at the resort, basking in the glow of her so-called freedom. She probably hadn't even noticed I was gone yet. Or maybe she had, and she was too proud to care. Either way, she would soon realize the consequences of her actions. As the day turned into evening, I allowed myself a rare indulgence, a quiet dinner alone, free from the tension and performative conversations that had become the norm with Olivia. I poured myself a glass of wine, savoring the peace that had been absent for far too long. The next morning, I checked my phone. As expected, there were no messages from Olivia. It was almost laughable. Here I was, her husband, the man who had funded her lavish lifestyle, and she couldn't even bother to check in. Around noon, my phone buzzed. Not a call, but a notification from one of the credit cards I'd canceled. Olivia was trying to use it. A smile tugged at the corners of my mouth as I imagined the scene. Olivia confidently handing over the card, only to have it declined. Her friends watching, judgmental and curious. The facade she had built starting to crack. I didn't feel guilty, not even a little. She had made her choices, and now she would face the consequences. Over the next few hours, the notifications kept coming. Spa treatments, room service, designer boutiques, all declined. Olivia's spending spree was unraveling in real time, and I didn't lift a finger to stop it. By evening, the calls started. First, a single ring, then silence. Then another, more persistent. I ignored them all, letting her desperation build. Finally, I turned my phone off entirely, sinking into the couch with a sense of satisfaction I hadn't felt in years. Olivia thought she could control me, manipulate me, but she was wrong. This wasn't the calm before the storm. The storm had already begun, and Olivia was about to realize just how much damage it would cause. The call started early the next morning. My phone buzzed relentlessly, the screen lighting up with Olivia's name over and over again. I let it ring, savoring the irony. For years, I had been the one reaching out, trying to bridge the gaps between us, only to be dismissed or ignored. Now, the tables had turned, and Olivia was desperate to get my attention. By mid-morning, I received a notification that made me pause, a message from the resort. Olivia's failed transactions were piling up, and the hotel was demanding payment. I smirked, imagining the chaos unfolding on her end. At the resort, things were unraveling quickly. Olivia and her friends had continued their indulgent lifestyle, oblivious to the financial storm brewing. They ordered extravagant meals, booked spa packages, and even planned a private boat ride, all under the assumption that my money would cover it. But reality struck hard when the first card was declined. "What do you mean, declined?" Olivia asked, her voice loud enough to turn heads in the elegant dining hall. The waiter shifted uncomfortably, holding out the receipt. I'm sorry, ma'am. The payment didn't go through. Perhaps there's another card you'd like to use? Fiona leaned over, her expression incredulous. Are you serious? This is Olivia Bennett we're talking about. Just run the card again. I've already tried, ma'am, the waiter replied, his tone apologetic but firm. Olivia's confidence faltered as she handed over a second card, another one linked to me. The waiter returned moments later, shaking his head. Declined, he said simply. The laughter and chatter at their table died, replaced by an uneasy silence. Clara was the first to break it. Olivia, what's going on? Olivia forced a smile, waving off their concern. It's just a mistake. David must have moved some things around. I'll sort it out. But as the hours passed and more transactions failed, the cracks in Olivia's facade grew wider. Resort staff approached her with increasing urgency, their polite professionalism giving way to firm demands for payment. Back home, I monitored the situation from a distance, my phone lighting up with alerts each time Olivia tried to use a card. It was like watching a slow-motion train wreck, and I couldn't look away. By the end of the day, Olivia's desperation reached its peak. She called me again, her voice strained when I finally answered. David, she began, her tone laced with forced calm. There seems to be an issue with the credit cards. The resort staff is saying they're declined. Can you check on that for me? I leaned back in my chair, letting the silence stretch before answering. I already know, Olivia. Her breath hitched. What do you mean? I mean I canceled them. All of them. The line went silent for a moment. Then her voice returned, sharp and accusing. You canceled them? Why would you do that? Why? I repeated, my voice calm but icy. Because I'm done, Olivia. Done funding your games, your lies, and your ego. You've taken enough from me, and it stops now. You're overreacting, she said, her voice rising. This is just a misunderstanding. You didn't need to humiliate me like this. I laughed, a cold, humorless sound. Humiliate you? That's rich coming from the woman who brought her friends on a trip I paid for and mocked me in front of them. No, Olivia. This isn't humiliation. This is justice. Before she could respond, I ended the call, cutting off whatever excuse or manipulation she had prepared. Back at the resort, Olivia's world continued to crumble. Clara and Fiona, once so eager to bask in her glow, began to distance themselves. Olivia, what's really going on? Clara demanded. You said you had everything under control. Now we're stuck with unpaid bills and no way to cover them. Fiona crossed her arms, her expression sour. Were you lying about being the breadwinner? Is David the one paying for everything? Olivia's temper flared, but she couldn't deny the truth. It's not like that, she insisted. David's just being difficult. But her friends weren't convinced. The bond they had shared, if it could even be called that, was disintegrating under the weight of Olivia's deception. As the resort staff continued to press for payment, Olivia realized she had no choice but to face the consequences. She tried calling me again, but I ignored every attempt. Later that evening, she received another blow. A resort employee approached her in the lobby, handing her an envelope. What's this? She asked, opening it with trembling hands. The words, divorce petition, stared back at her in bold letters. Her friends, who had gathered nearby, looked over her shoulder in stunned silence. The humiliation was complete. Olivia, Clara said after a long pause, her voice filled with a mix of pity and frustration. You've really done it this time. And for the first time in years, Olivia was left truly alone. It had been 2 days since I'd left the resort, and I'd stayed true to my decision to cut Olivia off entirely. My phone sat on the kitchen counter, its screen lighting up sporadically with Olivia's name, but I ignored each call. By now, the divorce papers I had arranged would have been delivered, and I could only imagine her reaction when she opened them. It didn't take long for the fallout to reach me. Later that evening, as I sat in my office reviewing documents, my phone buzzed relentlessly. At first, I thought it was Olivia, but when I glanced at the screen, I saw an unfamiliar number. Against my better judgment, I answered. David Bennett, I said curtly. Mr. Bennett, this is Karen from the Riviera Resort. The voice on the other end said politely. We're reaching out regarding an urgent matter involving your wife and her party. It appears there are unpaid charges for their stay, and they've informed us you are the account holder. I suppressed a laugh, leaning back in my chair. Karen, I'm not sure what Olivia told you, but we're no longer in a position where I'm responsible for her expenses. In fact, I've taken steps to ensure I'm not. Karen hesitated, clearly unsure how to proceed. I understand, sir, but the charges are significant. We were hoping to resolve this amicably. I have no doubt, I replied, my tone cool. But Olivia and her friends are adults. They can figure it out. Good luck. I hung up, shaking my head. Olivia had always relied on me to clean up her messes, but those days were over. Back at the resort, Olivia's world was falling apart. After the divorce papers were delivered, the resort staff refused to wait any longer for payment. They demanded immediate action, threatening to involve local authorities if the balance wasn't settled. David can't do this, Olivia fumed, pacing the lobby. She clutched the divorce papers in one hand, her phone in the other. He's being petty. He'll cave. He always does. But the resort manager wasn't interested in her personal drama. Ma'am, this is a business matter. We require payment in full before your party can continue to use our facilities. Clara, who had been silently observing the spectacle, finally snapped. Olivia, what is going on? First, the cards are declined, and now we're being told the bills haven't been paid? You said you had this covered. Fiona, never one to hold back, chimed in. You lied to us, didn't you? All that talk about being the breadwinner. It's all David's money, isn't it? Olivia glared at them, her composure cracking. That's not the point. David's being vindictive. He canceled everything without warning. Maybe because he's finally tired of your games, Clara retorted. The tension between them was palpable. Olivia, once the confident ringleader of their group, was now exposed and vulnerable. Her friends, who had basked in her generosity, were turning against her. When the resort staff demanded their passports as collateral, the humiliation reached its peak. Olivia was forced to call her brother, begging for a loan to settle the bills. He agreed reluctantly, but not without a lecture that left her seething. By the time the payments were cleared, the damage was done. Clara and Fiona packed their bags, refusing to spend another moment at the resort. This isn't what I signed up for, Clara said coldly. You can find your own way home, Olivia. Fiona gave her a scornful look. Good luck with your divorce. You're going to need it. And just like that, Olivia was alone. The next morning, she returned to our home, expecting to find some semblance of normalcy. Instead, she was met with locked doors and a note taped to the front. Olivia, your belongings have been packed and sent to your brother's house. Please contact Rebecca Smith for any further communication. She'll handle the rest. David. The note was short, impersonal, and final. Olivia stood on the porch, staring at the life she'd taken for granted. Inside, I sat with a cup of coffee, watching her through the window. It wasn't out of cruelty, it was out of clarity. This was the life she had chosen, and I wasn't going to let her drag me down with her anymore. After several minutes, she finally left, her shoulders slumped. I watched her drive away, feeling a strange mix of relief and sadness. This wasn't how I had envisioned our marriage ending, but it was the only path forward. For the first time in years, I felt free. The house was quiet when Olivia finally left, the kind of stillness that felt like a clean slate. I sat by the window, sipping my coffee, watching her car disappear down the street. A part of me felt heavy, weighed down by the wreckage of what once was. But another part, one I hadn't felt in years, felt free, untangled from her manipulation, her ego, her constant need to control every aspect of our lives. After she left, the real work began. I didn't want my children, Lily and Ethan, to hear about the divorce in bits and pieces or from whispers in Olivia's social circle. I had to tell them, but carefully. They deserved honesty without the burden of our adult conflicts. Later that evening, I sat them down in the living room. They were back from their trip with my parents, their laughter still echoing in my ears as they recounted their adventures. I hated to break their joy, but I knew it couldn't wait. Lily, Ethan, I began, my voice steady but soft. There's something important I need to talk to you about. Their smiles faded as they exchanged glances. "Is everything okay, Dad?" Ethan asked. "It will be," I assured them. "But things are going to change. Your mom and I have decided to separate." Lily's eyes widened. "Separate? What do you mean?" I took a deep breath, choosing my words carefully. "It means we won't be living together anymore. Your mom and I have had some problems for a long time, and this is the best decision for all of us." "But why?" Lily's voice cracked, her young mind struggling to grasp the complexity of adult relationships. I leaned forward, meeting their eyes. Sometimes, even when two people care about each other, they realize they're not happy together. It's no one's fault, and it doesn't change how much we love you. Ethan frowned, his brow furrowed in thought. "So, Mom's leaving?" "Yes," I said gently. "She's staying with your uncle for now. You'll still see her, and she'll always be your mom. That will never change." Lily sniffled, and I reached out to hold her hand. "I know it's hard to understand right now, but I promise, we'll get through this together. You two are the most important people in my life, and I'll always be here for you." They nodded slowly, their faces a mix of sadness and confusion. It wasn't an easy conversation, but it was necessary. I wanted them to feel secure, even as our family dynamic shifted. The next few days were a whirlwind of adjustments. I focused on creating a stable routine for the kids, ensuring they felt safe and loved. I took them to school, helped with homework, and planned movie nights to distract them from the tension. Meanwhile, Olivia's fallout continued. Word of her financial troubles and our impending divorce spread quickly through her social circle. The friends who had once flocked to her for parties and favors now distanced themselves, unwilling to associate with someone whose status had crumbled. Her brother called me once, exasperated. "David, she's a mess. She's blaming everyone but herself. I don't know how to deal with her." I sighed, leaning back in my chair. "She'll have to figure it out. I've done all I can." "Do you think she'll change?" he asked. I hesitated. "I don't know. That's up to her." At the same time, I began to feel lighter. Without Olivia's constant demands and criticism, I had the space to focus on myself. I dove into work, channeling my energy into new projects. I even started reconnecting with old friends, people I hadn't seen in years because Olivia had always found a reason to keep me tethered to her world. One evening, as I helped Ethan with his science project, he looked up at me and said, "Dad, you seem happier." The simplicity of his observation caught me off guard. I smiled, ruffling his hair. "Thanks, buddy. I think I am." The divorce proceedings moved swiftly, thanks to my meticulous preparation. Rebecca, my lawyer, handled everything efficiently, ensuring the settlement was fair but firm. Olivia fought initially, but she quickly realized she had little leverage. By the time the divorce was finalized, I felt a sense of closure. It wasn't the life I had envisioned, but it was a life I could rebuild. A life rooted in honesty, respect, and the unwavering love I had for my children. As for Olivia, her isolation grew. Without the financial security and social clout she had once enjoyed, she was forced to confront the reality of her choices. Whether or not she would learn from them remained to be seen. But that was no longer my concern. I had my children, my peace, and a future that felt bright for the first time in years. The fallout was over, and in its place was the promise of a new beginning. When I decided to cut Olivia off completely, I knew it would force her to face the consequences of her choices. What I didn't expect was how quickly her world would unravel. The woman who once thrived in the glow of high society and surrounded herself with sycophants was now facing the harsh reality of life without me as her safety net. It began with whispers among her friends. Clara and Fiona, who had abandoned her at the resort, wasted no time sharing their side of the story with their social circle. The tales of Olivia's unpaid bills and her humiliation at receiving divorce papers in the middle of a luxury vacation quickly made their rounds. Her carefully curated image of a powerful, independent woman shattered overnight. Olivia had always prided herself on being the center of attention, the life of every party, but now she was the topic of ridicule. Invitations to events dried up, and those who had once flattered her avoided her calls. The socialite who once commanded rooms with her presence was now a pariah. Her brother, Jacob, reluctantly took her in after she left the resort. He called me often during those first few weeks, venting his frustration. "David, she's impossible," he said one evening, his voice heavy with exhaustion. "She refuses to accept responsibility for anything. She blames you for everything. The divorce, the money, even her friends turning on her." I sighed, leaning back in my chair. "She needs to wake up, Jacob. This is the bed she made. All I can do is focus on moving forward for the kids and myself." Jacob groaned. "I know. I just wish she'd realize how good she had it. You gave her everything, David. And this is how she repays you?" "She'll figure it out," I replied. "Or she won't. Either way, it's not my problem anymore." Despite his frustrations, Jacob tried to help her. He encouraged her to look for a job, but Olivia scoffed at the idea. The woman who had once mocked me for working long hours now found herself unwilling and unprepared to do the same. "I can't work a regular job, Jacob," she snapped during one of their arguments, which he later recounted to me. "Do you know how humiliating that would be?" "People would talk." "People are already talking, Olivia," he shot back. Meanwhile, I was thriving. Without Olivia's constant demands and drama, I found myself rediscovering who I was. My business flourished as I poured my energy into new projects. More importantly, my relationship with Lily and Ethan grew stronger. We spent weekends hiking, cooking, and even tackling DIY projects around the house. One evening, as we sat around the dinner table, Lily looked at me thoughtfully. "Dad, do you miss Mom?" The question caught me off guard, but I answered honestly. "I miss the good times, Lily, but I don't miss the way things were at the end. Sometimes, letting go is the best thing you can do for yourself and for the people you care about." She nodded, her young mind processing my words. "I think I understand. You seem happier now." "I am," I said, smiling at both her and Ethan. "And that's because I have you too. You're the most important part of my life." Olivia, on the other hand, struggled to adapt. Her attempts to maintain her old lifestyle fell flat, and her isolation deepened. She reached out to a few acquaintances, hoping to rekindle friendships, but they offered only polite excuses and vague promises to catch up soon. One day, she called me. I debated whether to answer, but decided it was better to hear her out than ignore her completely. "David," she began, her tone softer than I'd heard in years. I just wanted to talk." "What do you need, Olivia?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. There was a pause before she replied. "I wanted to say I'm sorry for everything. I didn't realize how much I depended on you until it was gone. I know I messed up, and I don't expect you to forgive me, but I needed to tell you." Her words surprised me, but I didn't let my guard down. "I appreciate the apology," I said carefully, "but an apology doesn't erase what happened. I've moved on, Olivia, and I think you should too." She sniffled, and for a moment, I felt a pang of sympathy, but I reminded myself of all the times I tried to fix things, only to be met with contempt and indifference. "Take care of yourself, Olivia," I said before ending the call. After that, I heard from her less frequently. Jacob mentioned that she had finally started looking for work, though her progress was slow. She was learning the hard way that the world doesn't cater to those who take it for granted. As for me, I focused on the future. I wasn't bitter or angry anymore. I was simply free. Olivia's isolation was a consequence of her choices, and while I wished her no ill will, I had no intention of letting her drag me back into her chaos. Life without Olivia was quieter, simpler, and filled with opportunities one hadn't realized I was missing. For the first time in years, I was truly at peace. Months had passed since Olivia walked out of my life, leaving behind the wreckage of our marriage. In that time, I'd built something stronger, something more fulfilling, not just for myself, but for Lily and Ethan too. It hadn't been easy, but it had been worth it. Olivia's apology lingered in my mind. Her voice, so uncharacteristically soft, had struck a chord in me. For years, she had been the center of our relationship, consuming all the attention while I quietly supported her. Hearing her admit fault was unexpected, but it wasn't enough to undo what had been done. One afternoon, as I worked in my home office, my phone buzzed. It was Olivia. I hesitated, then answered. "David," she began, her voice hesitant. "I wanted to ask if we could meet." Just to talk. In person. About what? I asked, careful not to let my guard down. Everything, she said. I need to apologize properly. Please. After a long pause, I agreed. All right. Tomorrow, at the cafe near the park. Noon. The next day, I arrived early, my emotions a mix of curiosity and apprehension. Olivia walked in a few minutes later, looking different. She wasn't wearing her usual designer clothes or perfectly styled hair. She looked tired, humbled, like someone who had been through a storm and was still finding her footing. "Thank you for coming," she said, sitting across from me. I nodded, waiting for her to speak. "I've had a lot of time to think," she began, her hands clasped tightly on the table. "About us, about what I did to you, to our family. And I realize now how selfish I was. I took you for granted, David. You gave me everything, and I repaid you by treating you like you didn't matter." Her words were raw, unpolished, and they caught me off guard. "I don't know if you'll ever forgive me," she continued, her voice breaking, "but I needed to tell you how sorry I am. For the lies, the manipulation, the way I made you feel like you were less than you are. You didn't deserve that." I looked at her, searching for any sign of insincerity, but all I saw was a woman who had been broken by her own choices, now trying to piece herself back together. "I appreciate the apology," I said finally, "but Olivia, forgiveness doesn't mean going back to the way things were. Too much has happened, and I can't trust you again. Not the way I used to." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I understand. I don't expect us to go back. I needed to make things right, even if it's only in words." We sat in silence for a while, the weight of everything unsaid lingering between us. "How are the kids?" she asked softly. "They're doing well," I replied. "They miss you, but they're adjusting. I've tried to keep things stable for them." She smiled weakly. "You're a good father, David. Better than I ever gave you credit for." Her words hit harder than I expected. For years, I had been the steady force in our family, the one who made sacrifices without recognition. Hearing her acknowledge that was both validating and bittersweet. "I'll always be there for them," I said, "and I hope you'll do the same." She nodded, wiping her eyes. "I will. I'm trying to rebuild my life, to be someone they can be proud of again." We parted ways that day on a somewhat lighter note. While there was no reconciliation, there was closure, a sense that the wounds we had inflicted on each other were finally beginning to heal. In the weeks that followed, I saw glimpses of Olivia's effort to change. She reached out to the kids more often, attending their school events and making genuine attempts to reconnect. I allowed her that space, knowing it was important for Lily and Ethan to have both parents in their lives. As for me, I continued to move forward. I had started seeing someone, a kind, genuine woman named Emily, who valued me for who I was, not for what I could provide. Our relationship was still new, but it felt different. It felt real. One evening, as I sat on the porch with Emily, watching the sunset, I reflected on how far I had come. The betrayal that had once consumed me now felt like a distant memory. Olivia's apology had been a reminder that even the deepest wounds could begin to heal, but it had also reinforced my resolve to never settle for less than I deserved. Life wasn't perfect, but it was mine. And for the first time in years, I felt like I was exactly where I was meant to be. The early morning sunlight filtered through the living room window, casting a warm glow across the space. It was a new day, another step forward in a life that felt like it was finally mine. I sat at the kitchen table, sipping coffee while Lily and Ethan chattered about their plans for the weekend. Their laughter filled the house, a reminder of what truly mattered. It hadn't been easy getting here. The road from betrayal to this moment had been fraught with anger, heartbreak, and doubt. But now, looking at my children and the life we were rebuilding, I felt a peace I hadn't known in years. "Dad, can we go to the park later?" Ethan asked, his eyes bright with excitement. "Of course," I replied, smiling. "How about we pack a picnic and make a day of it?" Lily grinned. "Can Emily come too?" Her question caught me off guard, but only for a moment. Emily had been a constant in our lives lately, her warmth and kindness slowly weaving into the fabric of our family. She had met Lily and Ethan a few weeks ago, and to my relief, they adored her. "I'll ask her," I said, keeping my tone casual. "But let's plan it either way." Emily had been a surprise in every sense of the word. After years of feeling invisible in my marriage, she saw me for who I was, a father, a man, someone worth valuing. Her presence wasn't overwhelming or demanding. It was steady, supportive, and full of quiet joy. Later that afternoon, we met at the park. Emily arrived with a basket of snacks, her easy smile lighting up the day. Lily and Ethan ran ahead to the playground while we set up a blanket under a shady tree. "You're spoiling them," I teased as she unpacked cookies and sandwiches. "They deserve it," she said with a shrug. "And so do you." Her words made me pause. For so long, I had been conditioned to believe that my worth was tied to what I could provide. Emily reminded me that I was enough just as I was. As the day went on, I watched my kids play, their laughter mingling with the sounds of the park. Emily sat beside me, her hand resting lightly on mine, and I realized something profound. I was happy. Truly, deeply happy. Meanwhile, Olivia was navigating her own journey. She had finally found a job at a local boutique, a far cry from the high society events she once dominated. It was humbling work, but it seemed to be teaching her the value of effort and responsibility. She had also begun mending her relationship with Lily and Ethan. She called regularly, asked about their lives, and even attended a few school events. The bitterness that once defined our interactions was fading, replaced by a tentative truce. One evening, after a school play, Olivia approached me in the parking lot. "David," she began, her voice hesitant, "thank you for letting me be part of their lives. I know I don't deserve it, but I'm grateful." I nodded, my expression neutral but not unkind. "It's not about what you deserve, Olivia. It's about what they deserve. And they deserve to have both parents in their corner." Her eyes glistened with unshed tears, but she said nothing more. We parted ways, the unspoken understanding between us a sign of how far we had come. As the months passed, my life continued to take shape in ways I hadn't imagined. Emily and I grew closer, our relationship built on trust and mutual respect. She encouraged me to pursue hobbies I had long neglected. Photography, hiking, even cooking. One evening, as we prepared dinner together, she turned to me with a thoughtful expression. "David," she said softly, "have you ever thought about what's next? Not just for us, but for you." I paused, considering her question. "I think I'm already living it," I replied. "For the first time in years, I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." She smiled, her eyes warm. "I'm glad. You deserve this." The days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months. Life wasn't perfect, it never would be, but it was real, and it was mine. Olivia's chapter in my life had closed, but it had taught me lessons I would carry forever. The importance of self-respect, the power of forgiveness, and the value of authenticity. As I stood on the porch one evening, watching Lily and Ethan play in the yard, Emily by my side, I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. The road to this moment had been long and painful, but it had led me to a place of peace, love, and hope. This was my new beginning. My name is Cole Archer, and at 38, I've built a life I thought was pretty solid. I'm a software consultant, the kind of guy who works from home in sweatpants and still pulls in enough money to keep everyone around me happy. My wife, Lillian, her mother, Vivian, and even her lazy cousin, Ezra, they all depend on me, and I've never minded too much. I mean, I married into this loud, messy Southern family 8 years ago, and I figured that's just how it works. They're a little wild, always talking over each other, laughing too loud, and planning things I'd never dream up on my own. I used to call it eccentric, charming, even. But lately, I'm starting to see it's more than that. They don't just lean on me. They expect me to carry them, and I'm not sure how I feel about it anymore. Take this Bermuda trip, for instance. Lillian came to me a couple of months back, her eyes all bright, saying, "Cole, let's take the family somewhere amazing, like Bermuda." I could have said no. I could have pointed out that we'd just paid off her car or that Vivian's roof repair wasn't cheap. But I didn't. I said yes because I always say yes, and before I knew it, I was the one booking everything. Flights, a fancy villa with ocean views, even a boat tour for the whole crew. It wasn't just me and Lillian either. She wanted her mom, Ezra, and a few others tagged along too. I didn't blink at the cost. I just swiped my card and figured it'd be worth it to see her smile. She's got this way of making me feel like I'm the hero when I give her what she wants, and I've always liked that feeling. So, I planned it all, double-checked the reservations, and sent everyone the details. I pictured us on that boat, the sun warm on my face, maybe a cold beer in my hand, while Lillian laughed beside me. It sounded perfect, but then something started gnawing at me. It wasn't anything big at first, just a quiet little itch in the back of my mind. Maybe it was the way Lillian kept adding people to the trip without asking me, or how Vivian called me the bank one too many times with that smirk of hers. I'd laugh it off, but it stuck with me. I'd sit there in my home office, staring at code on my screen, and wonder why I was the only one putting anything into this. Lillian would breeze in, kiss my cheek, and say, "You're the best, Cole," and I'd let it go. She's beautiful, you know? Dark hair, green eyes, the kind of smile that makes you forget what you were mad about. That's how it's always been with us. I met her at a friend's barbecue, and she had me hooked in 10 minutes flat. I didn't care that her family came with her. They were part of the deal, and I told myself I could handle it. Back then, I thought they liked me. Vivian would call me son. Ezra would bum a beer and clap me on the back, and I felt like I belonged. But now, with this trip coming up, I'm not so sure. It's like I'm not even part of the plan, just the guy who makes it happen. I'd hear them on the phone, Lillian and her mom, giggling about something, and when I'd ask, they'd wave me off. "Oh, it's nothing, Cole," Lillian would say, but her eyes wouldn't meet mine. I started paying attention after that. Like when Ezra dropped by unannounced last week, sprawled on my couch, and said, "Man, this Bermuda thing's gonna be epic. Thanks for footing the bill." He grinned like it was a joke, but it didn't feel funny. I nodded, kept my mouth shut, and went back to my laptop. I didn't want to start a fight, not yet. I told myself I was overthinking it. Families are messy, right? They bicker, they push, they take, but they're still family. I've never had a big one of my own, just a quiet dad who passed when I was 20 and a mom who lives across the country now. Lillian's clan filled that gap for me, and I didn't mind the noise. At least, I didn't used to. But as the trip got closer, that itch turned into something heavier. I'd catch Vivian whispering to Lillian in the kitchen, their voices dropping when I walked in. One night, I overheard Ezra on the phone saying, "Yeah, Cole's got it covered. He always does. Always does." Those words stuck in my chest like a splinter. I sat there after he left, staring at the Bermuda itinerary on my screen, flight times, villa check-in, the boat tour schedule, and wondered why I wasn't more excited. I should have been. I'd worked hard for this. My job's good, steady, the kind of gig that lets me afford nice things without breaking a sweat. I'm not flashy about it, though. I drive a used truck, or the same sneakers until they fall apart. The money's for them, Lillian, Vivian, Ezra, for the life I thought we were building together. But sitting there, alone in my office with the house quiet, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Not just off, wrong. Like I'd missed a step somewhere and was about to trip. I didn't know what it was yet, but it was there, simmering under the surface, waiting for me to figure it out. 2 weeks before we were supposed to leave, it hit me full force. Vivian called me over for dinner, and I walked into something I never saw coming. But that's another story, one I'll get to soon enough. For now, I'm just Cole Archer, the guy who thought he had it all under control, staring at a trip I paid for and wondering why it didn't feel like mine anymore. 2 weeks before we were supposed to fly out to Bermuda, I got a call from Vivian, my mother-in-law, inviting me over for dinner at her place. She's got this big, creaky house about 20 minutes from ours, all wood floors and faded wallpaper, the kind of place that smells like fried chicken and mothballs no matter what's cooking. I didn't think much of it. Vivian loves her family dinners, and I've been dragged to plenty of them over the years. Lillian said she'd meet me there, so I threw on a clean shirt, grabbed my keys, and drove over, figuring it'd be the usual chaos. Loud stories, too much food, and Vivian bossing everyone around. I wasn't wrong about the chaos, but I had no idea what I was walking into. When I pulled up, the driveway was packed, Lillian's car, her Aunt Ruth's old sedan, even a couple of vehicles I didn't recognize. I stepped inside, and the air hit me thick with wine and chatter. Vivian was at the head of the dining table, her gray hair pulled back tight, waving a glass like she was toasting the room. Lillian sat next to her, picking at a plate of cornbread, her green eyes flicking up to me for half a second before dropping again. Ruth was there too, her loud laugh cutting through the noise, and two of Lillian's friends, Carrie and Beth, I think, were giggling over something on their phones. Ezra wasn't around, which was odd, but I didn't dwell on it. I slid into the empty chair next to Lillian, gave her a quick kiss on the cheek, and said, "Hey, looks like a party." She smiled, but it was tight, like she was holding something back. I should have noticed that right away, but I was too busy grabbing a roll and nodding at Vivian's latest rant about her neighbor's dog. The wine kept flowing, and I stuck to water. I've never been big on drinking, especially not around this crowd. Everything felt normal enough until Vivian set her glass down hard, cleared her throat, and said, "Cole, we've made a small change to the trip." The room went quiet, and I felt every pair of eyes land on me. I put my roll down slow, wiped my hands on a napkin, and looked at her. "What kind of change?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. Lillian jumped in before Vivian could answer, her words spilling out fast. "I invited Jonah, just for a few days." Jonah, her ex-husband. The guy who'd crashed our wedding rehearsal 8 years ago, drunk as hell, yelling about how I'd stolen his girl. He'd shoved me into a table, and it took Ezra and 2 ushers to drag him out. I hadn't seen him since, but his name still made my jaw tighten. I turned to Lillian, waiting for her to meet my eyes, but she wouldn't. She just stared at her plate, crumbling that cornbread into dust. "Jonah," I said, real slow, letting it sink in. "You invited Jonah to the trip I'm paying for." She nodded, quick and sharp, like it was no big deal. Before I could even process that, Vivian leaned forward, her smirk sharp as a knife, and added, "And Mark will join too. You know, your wife's high school sweetheart." Carrie and Beth burst into giggles, like this was some hilarious sitcom moment. Mark, the guy Lillian dated for 3 years before college, the one she brought up a few too many times when we first got together, always with this little smile like she was testing me. I hadn't heard his name in years, and now he was tagging along to Bermuda? My Bermuda? I felt my pulse kick up, but I kept my face blank. Vivian wasn't done. She sipped her wine, eyeing me over the rim, and said, "Since you're not feeling the vibe, Cole, we'll just give your ticket to Mark." Ruth snorted, then covered it with a cough. Lillian still wouldn't look at me. The room spun a little, not from wine, but from the sheer guts of what they were pulling. I leaned back in my chair, crossed my arms, and let the silence stretch. "Let me get this straight," I said, my voice low but clear. "You're telling me you've invited 2 guys my wife used to sleep with to a vacation I planned and paid for, and now you're kicking me off it?" Vivian shrugged, like I was being dramatic. "It's not like that, Cole. We just thought it'd be fun." Fun. That word hit me like a slap. Lillian finally glanced up, her eyes wide, and said, "You're overreacting. It's just a trip." Overreacting. I looked around the table, Vivian smirking, Ruth avoiding my gaze, Carrie and Beth whispering to each other, and I felt like I was in some twisted game I didn't sign up for. I could have yelled. I could have flipped the damn table and stormed out. But I didn't. I've always been the calm one, the guy who fixes things, not breaks them. So I just sat there, letting it burn inside me, and started piecing it together. This wasn't a last-minute idea. They'd planned this, talked about it behind my back, laughed about it, probably poured more wine while they figured out how to sell it to me. And Lillian, my wife, the woman I'd built my whole life around, was in on it. I thought about the trip, my money, my time, my effort, and now Jonah and Mark were waltzing in like they belonged there more than I did. I pictured Jonah's smug face, Mark's easy grin, and me what? Sitting at home while they sipped cocktails on my dime? No, that wasn't happening. I pushed my chair back, slow and deliberate, and stood up. "Cole, sit down," Vivian said, her tone sharp now, like she was scolding a kid. I ignored her. I looked at Lillian one last time, hoping she'd say something, anything, to make this make sense. She didn't. She just stared at me, her mouth half open, like she was surprised I wasn't rolling over like usual. "Enjoy your dinner," I said, my voice flat. I nodded once, turned, and walked out. The screen door slammed behind me, and I heard Vivian mutter something, followed by Ruth's loud, "Well, that went great." I didn't care. I got in my truck, started the engine, and sat there for a minute, hands gripping the wheel. They thought I'd come back, tail between my legs, begging to keep my spot on that trip. They were wrong. I drove home, the road blurring a little, not from tears, but from the anger boiling up. By the time I pulled into my driveway, I knew what I had to do. They wanted to play me? Fine. But I wasn't playing anymore. I walked inside, grabbed my laptop, and started typing. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. I didn't lose it when I got home from that dinner at Vivian's, not the way they probably expected me to. I could have shouted, smashed something, called Lillian, and demanded answers until my voice gave out. But that's not me. I'm not the guy who explodes. I'm the one who thinks, who plans, who waits until the right moment hits. So I walked into our house, my house, really, since I'd paid for every brick of it, dropped my keys on the counter, and stood there in the dark for a minute, letting the quiet settle over me. My chest was tight, my hands still shaky from gripping the steering wheel, but I kept my head clear. I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of seeing me break. I flipped on the kitchen light, grabbed a glass of water, and sat down at the table where Lillian and I used to eat breakfast together. Used to. Funny how fast that felt, like a lifetime ago. I replayed the dinner in my head, Vivian's smirk, Lillian's dodgeball eyes, the way they all acted like I was the crazy one for not smiling and nodding while they handed my trip to Jonah and Mark. "You're overreacting," Lillian had said, like inviting her exes to a vacation I'd funded was just a quirky little hiccup. I set the glass down hard enough to slosh water on the table and stared at it, feeling that burn in my gut grow hotter. Overreacting? No. I was reacting exactly how any sane man would. I looked at her chair, empty now, and said out loud to nobody, "You invited 2 men you slept with to a vacation I'm funding, and didn't even tell me." My voice bounced off the walls, steady but sharp, like I was testing how it sounded. It sounded right. It sounded like the truth they didn't want to hear. I stood up, paced the kitchen a few times, then stopped by the sink and looked out the window at the backyard. Dark, still, just a shadow of the swing set we'd put up years ago for no kids we ever had. Ezra's voice popped into my head then, that stupid clap on my shoulder at the dinner table. "Lighten up, man. You'll still be around." Around? Like I was some tag-along, some extra they could shove in the corner while Jonah and Mark took center stage. I clenched my fists, then let them go. No point in getting mad at Ezra. He's a leech, always has been. It was Lillian who'd cut me deepest. My wife. The woman I'd said I do to, the one I'd built this life for. She didn't just go along with this, she'd helped plan it. I could feel it. I turned away from the window, walked to my office, and sat down at my desk. The laptop hummed to life, and I stared at the screen. The Bermuda itinerary still open from earlier that day, flights, villa, boat tour, all in my name, all paid with my card. My trip. My money. And they thought they could rewrite the guest list like I was some doormat who'd just shrug and say, "Sure, why not?" I leaned back in my chair, ran a hand through my hair, and let out a slow breath. They'd misread me. Badly. I didn't yell at that dinner table because I didn't need to. Words wouldn't fix this. Action would. I leaned forward, clicked into the airline site, and canceled every single flight reservation, one by one, watching the booking canceled confirmations pop up like little victories. Then the villa gone. The boat tour done. My fingers moved fast, steady, no hesitation. I didn't feel guilty, didn't second-guess it. This wasn't petty. This was me taking back what was mine. When it was all done, I pulled up my email, attached screenshots of every cancellation, and sent it to the whole group. Lillian, Vivian, Ruth, even Ezra, though he wasn't at dinner. Subject line: trips off. No explanation, no rant, just the facts. Let them figure it out. I sat back, watching the email whoosh away, and felt something shift inside me. Not relief yet, but a kind of quiet power. They'd think I was sulking, throwing a tantrum because my feelings got hurt. Let them. I wasn't done. I opened a new tab, searched for flights, solo flights, just for me. Lake Como, Italy, popped into my head. I'd seen pictures once, blue water, green hills, old stone towns. Peaceful. The opposite of the circus I'd been living in. I found a one-way ticket leaving in 3 days, clicked book, and watched the confirmation load. No villa, no boat, just me and a suitcase. My phone buzzed. Lillian, probably, or Vivian, but I ignored it. I wasn't ready to hear their excuses yet. Instead, I called Julian Prescott, my lawyer. We'd met years ago through a work buddy, and he'd handled a contract dispute for me once. He picked up on the second ring, his voice gruff but calm. "Cole, it's late. Everything okay?" I didn't waste time. "I need you to start separation proceedings against Lillian. I'm leaving the country in a few days. I'll sign whatever you need from there." He paused, then said, "You sure about this?" I looked at the flight confirmation on my screen, the canceled Bermuda mess, and nodded even though he couldn't see me. "Yeah, I'm sure. He didn't push, just said, I'll get it rolling. Stay safe, man. We hung up, and I leaned back again, the house silent except for the hum of the laptop. My phone kept buzzing. 5 times, 10, a dozen. Texts, calls, probably the whole family losing their minds. I didn't check. I shut the phone off, set it face down on the desk, and stood up. The air felt different now, lighter, like I'd shaken off a weight I didn't even know I was carrying. I walked to the bedroom, pulled a suitcase from the closet, and started packing, slowly, deliberately, just the basics. Shirts, jeans, a pair of boots. No rush. I didn't need much where I was going. I thought about Lillian's face at dinner, the way she wouldn't look at me, and wondered what she'd say when she realized I wasn't bluffing. Would she cry? Yell? Beg? I didn't know, and for the first time in years, I didn't care. I zipped the suitcase shut, set it by the door, and went back to my office. I opened a notebook, one I hadn't touched in forever, and started writing. Just a line at first. Tonight, I took my life back. It wasn't dramatic, it was true. I closed the book, turned off the light, and went to bed. The storm was coming. They'd make sure of that. But for now, I slept better than I had in months. 10 minutes after I hit send on that email with the cancellation screenshots, my phone lit up like a fireworks show. I'd turned it back on just to see how they'd react, and man, they didn't disappoint. I sat there in my office chair, the laptop still glowing with my Lake Como flight confirmation, and watched the chaos unfold. The group chat, some family thread Lillian had named Archer Clan, years ago, exploded first. Lillian's message popped up. Where are the bookings? Cole, what's going on? No, please. No, are you okay? Just straight to the point, like I'd misplaced her favorite shoes or something. Then Vivian chimed in, all caps. What do you mean canceled? I could hear her voice in my head, that shrill bark she used when she didn't get her way. Ruth, always the peacemaker until she wasn't, typed, I told you not to push him. And I almost laughed, because it was the first honest thing I'd seen from any of them. Ezra didn't write anything, but I figured he was too busy mooching off someone else's Wi-Fi to care. My phone buzzed again, Lillian calling this time, but I let it ring. I wasn't ready to talk, not yet. I didn't owe them an explanation. They'd made their move at that dinner, and this was mine. I leaned back, staring at the ceiling, and let the buzzing go on, a little symphony of their panic. It felt good, not cruel good, just fair. I'd spent years bending over backwards for these people, and the one time I said no, they thought they could steamroll me anyway. Not this time. I set the phone down, muted it, and turned back to my laptop. Lake Como was waiting, and I wasn't about to let their meltdown derail me. I pulled up the flight details again, departing in 3 days, one way, no return date. I didn't need one. I'd figure that out later. The ticket was cheap enough, and I had savings, money Lillian didn't even know about, tucked away in an account I'd set up years ago for emergencies. This qualified. I booked a small hotel too, nothing fancy, just a room with a view of the lake. I pictured myself there, sipping coffee on a balcony, no voices nagging in my ear, no demands pulling me 10 different ways. It wasn't revenge, it was escape, and it felt right. My phone kept vibrating on the desk, a silent tantrum I could ignore. I didn't need to read the rest of their messages to know what they'd say, anger, guilt trips, maybe some fake tears thrown in for good measure. I'd seen it all before. Like that time Vivian borrowed $2,000 from me for her car and cried when I asked for it back. Or when Lillian swore she'd pay half the mortgage someday, then never did. I'd let it slide every time, told myself it was fine, that I could handle it. But this? Inviting Jonah and Mark? Kicking me off my own trip? That wasn't fine. That was a line they didn't get to cross. I stood up, stretched, and walked to the kitchen to grab a beer, something I rarely did, but tonight called for it. The house was quiet, just the hum of the fridge and the clink of the bottle against the counter. I popped the cap, took a long sip, and leaned against the sink, thinking. They'd figure out soon enough that I wasn't bluffing. The trip was gone, flights, villa, boat, all of it, and they couldn't undo that. I'd locked them out of my accounts months ago, a habit I'd picked up after Vivian tried using my credit card for business expenses without asking. They had no leverage now, no way to guilt me back into line. I took another sip and smiled a little, picturing their faces when they realized it. My phone buzzed again, probably 15 calls by now, but I left it in the office. I didn't need the noise. Instead, I opened my email and wrote to Julian, my lawyer. Initiate separation proceedings, I typed. I'll be out of the country soon, Send me whatever I need to sign digitally. I hit send. No hesitation. Julian would handle it. He was good like that. No nonsense. Just results. I'd known him long enough to trust he'd keep this clean and quiet, at least on my end. Lillian could scream all she wanted. The law didn't care about her feelings. I finished the beer, tossed the bottle in the recycling, and went back to my office. My phone was a mess of notifications, missed calls from Lillian, Vivian, even Ruth, plus a dozen texts I didn't bother opening. I turned it off completely this time, slid it into a drawer, and shut the laptop. The house felt bigger without their voices bouncing around in my head, like I could finally hear myself think. I walked to the bedroom, kicked off my shoes, and sat on the edge of the bed. Our bed, though it hadn't felt like that in a while. Lillian's side was still messy, a tangle of sheets and a pillow she'd hugged more than me lately. I didn't touch it. Let her deal with it when she came back, if she came back. I lay down, staring at the ceiling, and let my mind drift to Como. I'd never been to Italy, never even left the States much, but it called to me now. I imagined the water, the mountains, the kind of quiet that didn't come with strings attached. I'd be gone before they could corner me, before they could twist this into something I'd feel bad about. They'd try. I knew that. Vivian with her lectures, Lillian with her tears, but I'd be halfway across the world, out of reach. I rolled over, grabbed my notebook from the nightstand, and wrote another line. They thought they'd win. They didn't. It wasn't much, but it was enough. I closed the book, turned off the lamp, and lay there in the dark, listening to the house settle. My phone stayed off, their messages piling up in silence. I didn't care. I'd said what I needed to with those cancellations, with that flight to Como, with that email to Julian. They'd get the message soon enough. Not the one they wanted, but the one they deserved. I closed my eyes, the beer settling warm in my stomach, and let myself relax. The storm was theirs now, not mine. I'd be on a plane in 3 days, and whatever they threw at me between now and then, I'd handle it. I always did. But this time, it'd be on my terms, not theirs. Sleep came easy, and for once, I didn't dream of Lillian's voice or Vivian's smirk. Just water, blue and endless, stretching out ahead of me. 3 days after I canceled the Bermuda trip and booked my flight to Lake Como, I was gone. I didn't stick around to watch the fallout in person, didn't need to. I'd packed my suitcase, locked up the house, and driven myself to the airport with the radio off. Just me and the hum of the engine. The flight was long, but I didn't mind. Every mile between me and them felt like a knot loosening in my chest. I landed in Italy, took a shuttle to my little hotel by the lake, and settled in with nothing but a backpack and a clean slate. I didn't check my phone for a while. Kept it off, actually, because I wasn't ready to deal with whatever mess they'd left behind. But a week later, I got curious. I turned it on, connected to the hotel's Wi-Fi, and let the notifications roll in. That's when I heard what happened at the airport back home, pieced together from texts, voicemails, and a few gleeful DMs from people who weren't on Lillian's side anymore. They'd shown up that weekend, the whole crew, ready for paradise. I could see it in my head clear as day. Vivian in one of her loud floral dresses, barking at Ezra to carry her bags, Lillian fussing with her hair, maybe even Jonah and Mark strutting around like they owned the place. They'd gone all out, I heard. Matching family t-shirts, the kind with some cheesy slogan like Archer Bermuda Bash printed across the chest. I bet Lillian designed them, thinking it'd make for cute photos. They rolled up to the check-in counter, all swagger and sunscreen, only to find out there were no tickets, no reservations, nothing waiting for them. The gate agent must have looked at them like they were nuts, tapping away at her computer, saying, "I'm sorry, ma'am. There's no record of your booking." Vivian, I'm told, turned pale as a ghost, her mouth flapping open and shut like a fish out of water. She probably demanded to speak to a manager, waving her arms, while Lillian started crying right there in front of everyone, mascara streaking down her face. Jonah, good old Jonah, lost his temper and baggage claim, cursing loud enough to turn heads, kicking at his suitcase like it was the bag's fault. Mark, from what I heard, just shrugged, said, "Well, this sucks," and walked off to the parking lot without a backward glance. Ruth tried to calm them down, but Ezra's girlfriend, Brielle, later told me it was a total circus, people staring, kids pointing, the whole family unraveling right there in the terminal. I sat on my hotel balcony, a tiny thing overlooking Lake Como, sipping espresso from a chipped mug, and pictured every second of it. The water stretched out in front of me, blue and calm, little boats bobbing along like they didn't have a care in the world. I didn't laugh out loud, but I felt light, lighter than I had in years. They'd built this big, shiny plane on my back, and when I pulled out, it crashed down hard. I didn't feel bad, not even a little. They'd earned it. I took another sip, the coffee bitter and strong, and leaned back in the wobbly metal chair. The air smelled clean, like pine and water, nothing like the heavy humidity back home. I'd been in Como a few days by then, wandering the narrow streets, eating pasta at hole-in-the-wall spots, letting the sun warm my face without anyone telling me what to do next. It was the first time in forever I wasn't running someone else's errands or paying someone else's bills. I'd left them with nothing, no flights, no villa, no yacht, and it felt like I'd finally taken something for myself. Brielle's DM popped up while I was scrolling. You should have seen their faces. Cole. Total meltdown. Wish I'd recorded it. She'd attached a blurry photo, Vivian yelling at a counter agent, Lillian slumped in a chair, head in her hands. I zoomed in, studied it for a minute, then closed it. I didn't need the proof. I could imagine it fine. I wrote back, thanks for the update. Glad I missed it, and left it at that. She'd been texting me bits and pieces since I left. Nothing pushy, just little updates. I liked her. She'd never bought into the family's nonsense, even if Ezra did. I set the phone down, picked up my notebook, and started writing again. I'd been doing that a lot, jotting down thoughts, moments, stuff I didn't want to forget. Day 5 in Como. I wrote. They fell apart without me. I didn't. Simple, but true. I closed the book and stood up, stretching my arms over my head. The lake glittered under the afternoon sun, and I decided to walk down to it, maybe dip my feet in. I grabbed my shoes, locked the room, and headed out, the cobblestone path cool under my soles. I wasn't lonely, not like I thought I'd be. Back home, I'd always been surrounded, but it was a crowd that drained me, not filled me up. Here, alone, I was starting to feel alive. I passed an old guy fishing off a dock, nodded at him, and he nodded back, no words needed. I kept going, found a quiet spot by the water, and sat down on a smooth rock. The lake lapped at the shore, soft and steady, and I let my mind wander. I wondered what Lillian said to the gate agent. Probably some sob story about her mean husband ruining everything. I wondered if Vivian tried to bribe someone, flashing that fake charm she thought worked on everyone. I wondered if Jonah punched a wall when he got home, or if Mark just laughed it off like he didn't care either way. Didn't matter. They weren't my problem anymore. I kicked off my shoes, rolled up my jeans, and stuck my feet in the water, cold, sharp, waking me up. I stayed there a while, watching the sun dip lower, the sky turning pink and gold. My phone buzzed again, another voicemail, probably Vivian this time, but I didn't check it. I didn't need to hear her voice to know she'd blame me, call me selfish, say I'd ruined their fun. Let her. I wasn't going back to fix it. I pulled my feet out, shook them dry, and stood up. The walk back to the hotel was slow, easy, my shadows stretching long on the path. I'd started living, really living, and they couldn't touch that. Not here. Not anymore. I'd been in Lake Como for about 2 weeks when I finally logged into social media again. Not because I missed it, but because I wanted to see how they were spinning the mess I'd left behind. I'd kept my phone off most of the time, letting the quiet of Italy soak into me. But curiosity got the better of me one morning. I was sitting at a small cafe near the lake, a plate of warm bread and a coffee in front of me, the water sparkling under a clear sky. I pulled out my phone, connected to the cafe's Wi-Fi, and opened the app one hadn't touched since before the dinner ambush. The first thing I saw was Lillian's post, pinned at the top of her profile like a billboard. My husband abandoned us, she wrote. We made one harmless change to a trip, and he lost it. Canceled everything and left us stranded. I'm heartbroken. I read it twice, letting the words sink in, and took a slow sip of coffee. Heartbroken? That's what she was going with. I scrolled down, and there was Vivian, right on cue, commenting under it. He's unstable. That's what he is. Poor Lillian, stuck with a man who'd rather run than talk. I set the cup down and leaned back in my chair, staring at the screen. Unstable. Abandoned. Harmless change. They'd turned it into a soap opera, and I was the villain, some unhinged guy who flipped out over nothing and ditched his family. I could have been mad, could have typed up a big rant right there to set the record straight, but I didn't. I just kept scrolling, watching their story unfold. A few of Lillian's friends had chimed in. Carrie with a sad emoji, Beth with a "you deserve better" girl. and some random cousins I barely knew had liked it. It was a performance, all of it, polished up to make them look like victims and me like the bad guy. I pictured Lillian typing it out, maybe sniffling for effect, Vivian nodding over her shoulder, both of them sure this would win them the crowd. I shook my head, almost impressed by how fast they'd flipped the script. Almost. I took a bite of bread, chewed slow, and thought about what they weren't saying, how they'd invited Jonah and Mark, how they'd tried to kick me off my own trip, how they'd planned it behind my back. None of that made it to their little online pity party. I was about to close the app when a message popped up, not from them, but from Brielle, Ezra's girlfriend. "Hey, Cole," she wrote. "They crossed the line with this one. If you need receipts, I've got screenshots. They're full of it." I paused, my thumb hovering over the screen. "Receipts?" I typed back, "What kind of receipts?" and waited. She didn't take long. A minute later, my phone pinged with a string of images, group chat logs, text threads, even a photo of a hotel receipt. I opened the first one, a chat between Lillian and Jonah from 3 months ago. "Miss you," she'd written. "Dinner soon?" His reply, "You know I'm there. Cole won't mind." Her answer, "He never does." I stared at that for a long time, the bread forgotten on my plate. 3 months. Not a spur-of-the-moment invite for Bermuda. This had been going on for a while. I swiped to the next screenshot, Lillian and Vivian, plotting. "Jonah's in," Vivian wrote. "Mark too. Cole will get over it." Lillian, "He'll pay for it either way." I felt my stomach twist, not from hunger but from the cold, hard truth of it. They'd been scheming this for months, secret dinners with Jonah, sneaky hotel meetups, even a burner phone she'd shared with him, according to Brielle's notes. I opened the hotel receipt, some cheap place an hour from our house, booked under her name, paid with cash. Then the kicker, a text from Lillian to Mark, sent weeks before the dinner, with my Bermuda itinerary attached. "Pick whatever excursions you want," she'd written. "Cole's got it covered." Mark's reply, "Sweet. Let's make it fun." Fun. There was that word again, the same one Vivian threw at me when she announced they were giving my ticket away. I set the phone down, leaned my elbows on the table, and rubbed my face with both hands. It wasn't just a betrayal, it was a production, a whole play they'd rehearsed while I was busy working, paying bills, thinking we were a team. I looked out at the lake, the water so still it mirrored the mountains, and felt my jaw tighten. They counted on me being the same old Cole, quiet, steady, the guy who'd grumble but never push back. They'd miscalculated. I picked up the phone again, wrote to Brielle. "Thanks. This helps a lot. Keep me posted if anything else comes up." She replied quick, "Will do. You're better off without them." I didn't answer that, just closed the app, finished my coffee, and paid the bill. The waiter smiled, said something in Italian I didn't catch, and I nodded back, distracted. I stepped outside, the air cool against my skin, and started walking along the lake path. The screenshots burned in my mind. Every word, every date, every lie piling up like bricks. Lillian hadn't just reconnected with Jonah. She'd been sneaking around with him, plotting with her mom, roping in Mark like it was some twisted reunion tour. And me? I was the wallet, the fool who'd foot the bill while they laughed behind my back. I kicked a pebble into the water, watched it sink, and kept walking. Not everyone bought their sob story, though. Brielle didn't, and a few others had messaged me too. Old work buddies, a cousin of mine from out west, saying they saw through the posts. "Doesn't add up," my cousin wrote. "Lillian's full of crap." It wasn't much, but it was enough to know I wasn't crazy. I stopped by a bench, sat down, and pulled out my notebook. "They're spinning it hard," I wrote. "But the truth's louder. I've got proof now." I closed it, leaned back, and watched a boat drift by, an old guy rowing slow and steady. I wasn't going to post anything, wasn't going to fight them online. That wasn't my style. I'd let Julian handle it. Those screenshots would look real nice in court. For now, I was here, breathing clean air, free of their noise. The spin didn't matter, the facts did. And I had them. I woke up early one morning in Lake Como, the kind of early where the sky's still gray and the birds haven't started chirping yet. My hotel room was small, just a bed, a desk, and a window that opened to the lake, but it felt like enough. I'd been there almost a month now, settling into a rhythm. Coffee by the water, long walks through the town, a little work when I felt like it. That morning, though, I had something else on my mind. Julian, my lawyer, had emailed me the night before, saying the divorce papers were ready to serve. I sat on the edge of the bed, my phone in one hand, and read his message again. "Everything's set, Cole. I've got documentation on Lillian's emotional abuse, her slander online, and some financial misconduct we dug up. Vivian's in it too. Used your business account for personal purchases. We're ready to move. Just say the word. I set the phone down and stared out the window, the lake barely visible through the dawn haze. Emotional abuse, slander, financial misconduct. Those words hit hard, not because they surprised me, but because they made it real. I'd known Lillian and her family were messy, but seeing it laid out like that, clean and legal, felt like a punch I wasn't ready for. I stood up, splashed water on my face, and got dressed. Jeans, a sweater, nothing fancy. I needed air, needed to think, so I grabbed my notebook and headed to my usual cafe, the one with the wobbly tables and the old guy who always smiled when I ordered my espresso. I sat outside, the air cool against my skin, and opened Julian's email again. He'd attached a draft of the papers, and I skimmed them, my coffee going cold. There it was, everything I'd been through, boiled down to bullet points. Lillian's secret meetings with Jonah, her texts to Mark, the way she'd painted me as the bad guy online. Julian had even found proof of her spending my money on things she never told me about, clothes, trips, even a deposit for a car she claimed was a gift from her mom. And Vivian? She'd been dipping into my business account for years, charging consulting fees for a company that didn't exist. I leaned back in my chair, watching a couple of early risers stroll by with their dogs. I wasn't shocked, not really, but it still stung. I trusted them, Lillian most of all, and they'd played me like I was nothing but a bank account with legs. I typed back to Julian, "Go ahead and serve them. Send me anything I need to sign." I hit send, took a sip of coffee, and felt a weight lift, just a little. This wasn't about revenge. It was about closing a door they'd kept kicking open. I'd already moved most of our marital assets, mine, legally, into a separate trust months ago, back when I first caught Vivian messing with my accounts. The house, the savings, even the villa Lillian loved showing off to her friends, it was all out of her reach now. Her car? Leased in my name, and I'd already told the dealership to repossess it. I didn't gloat about it. Didn't need to. It was just business, same as they'd treated me. I finished my coffee, paid the bill, and started walking along the lake path, my notebook tucked under my arm. The water was calm, reflecting the mountains like a painting, and I let my mind wander. I thought about Lillian opening those papers, her face going pale when she saw the evidence, texts, receipts, bank statements. She'd probably cry, call her mom, maybe try to post another sob story online. But it wouldn't work this time. Julian was thorough, and the truth was on my side. Vivian would lose it, I bet, scream about family and loyalty while ignoring her own scams. I kicked a pebble into the water and kept going, the crunch of gravel under my shoes steadying me. I wasn't worried about them fighting back. They didn't have the money or the brains to outsmart Julian. Lillian's posts had already started losing traction. I checked last night, and half the comments were calling her out, asking why she'd invited her exes on my trip. People weren't as dumb as she thought. I stopped by a bench, sat down, and opened my notebook. "Paper served today," I wrote. "They'll try to spin it, but it's over. I'm done carrying their weight." I closed the book and looked out at the lake, a boat drifting slow in the distance. I wondered what they'd say when the news hit Lillian, Vivian, maybe even Ezra, though he'd probably just shrug and mooch off someone else. I didn't care much. They'd made their bed, and I wasn't tucking them in anymore. My phone buzzed, a text from Brielle. "Heard the papers are coming. Good for you. Lillian's been whining to anyone who'll listen." I smiled, typed back, "Thanks for the heads up," and left it at that. Brielle had been a lifeline, feeding me bits of truth when I needed it most. I stood up, stretched, and kept walking, the path curving toward the town square. I passed a market setting up, old ladies selling cheese, kids chasing each other around crates, and felt a pang of something I couldn't name. Not sadness, not regret, but relief, maybe, mixed with a little ache for what could have been. I loved Lillian once, loved her laugh, her fire, the way she'd make me feel like I could do anything. But that was a long time ago, before the lies, before the games. Now, I was here, starting over, and she was back there, stuck in her own mess. I circled back to the hotel, the sun higher now, warming my face. Julian would handle the rest, file the papers, freeze their access, make sure they couldn't touch what was mine. I didn't need to fight. I just needed to keep moving forward. I climbed the stairs to my room, tossed my notebook on the desk, and stood by the window, watching the lake shimmer. They'd be loud for a while. I knew Vivian's rants, Lillian's tears, but it wouldn't change anything. I'd cut the threads they tied me up with, and for the first time in years, I was free. Not angry, not bitter, just done. I grabbed a bottle of water from the mini fridge, took a long drink, and sat down to work, a small coding job for a local guy. Nothing big. It felt good, normal, like I was building something new. The fight was theirs now, not mine. The divorce papers hit them like a brick through a window, and I didn't need to be there to know it. I was still in Lake Como, a month and a half into my new life, when the reactions started trickling in. I'd been keeping my phone on low, checking it once a day or so, just enough to stay connected without drowning in their noise. That morning, I was out on my balcony, the lake spread out below me like a postcard, a half-eaten croissant on the table next to my coffee. The air was crisp, the kind that wakes you up without trying, and I was feeling good, really good, until I saw the voicemail count. 7 from Vivian, all left in the last 12 hours. I didn't listen right away. I knew what I'd get: yelling, guilt trips, maybe some crocodile tears if she was feeling creative. I scrolled through my text instead, found one from Brielle: papers landed yesterday. Vivian's losing her mind. Lillian's playing the victim again. Thought you'd want to know. I smiled a little, typed back: thanks. Let me know if it gets wild, and set the phone down. Wild was an understatement. I'd find out later, but for now, I wanted to hear it straight from the source. I picked up the phone again, took a deep breath, and played the first voicemail. Vivian's voice came through sharp and loud, like she was standing right next to me. Cole, this is ridiculous. Divorce papers? You're tearing this family apart over a stupid trip. Call me back right now. Click. I deleted it, moved to the next. Same tone, angrier. You think you can just walk away like this? We're not done, mister. I'll fight this. Click. By the third one, she was rambling about lawyers and what people will think, and by the 7th, her voice cracked. This isn't how family works, Cole. You're destroying everything. I sat there, staring at the lake, and let that sink in. Destroying everything. Funny how she saw it that way. Me, the guy who'd paid their bills, fixed their messes, and taken their crap for years, was the one wrecking it all because I finally said no. I deleted the rest without listening and leaned back in my chair, the croissant going stale in the cool air. Family. That word used to mean something to me, but now it just sounded like a leash they kept yanking. My phone buzzed again, an email this time, from Lillian. I opened it, expecting more of her social media sob story, but it was short. Cole, can we just talk? Please. No apology, no explanation, just that. I read it twice, my thumb hovering over the reply button, then closed it. Talk? What was there to say? She'd had months, years, really, to talk, and instead she'd picked Jonah, Mark, and a stack of lies over me. I wasn't running back to fix her feelings. I set the phone face down and finished my coffee, the bitter taste grounding me. They could scream all they wanted. I wasn't budging. Later that day, Brielle sent more. She'd been my eyes back home, and I owed her for it. Vivian's telling everyone you've lost it, she wrote. Lillian's moping around, saying she never meant to hurt you. Ezra tried to call you out, said he'd deal with you if you ever came back. Julian shut him down with a cease and desist letter. It's a mess. I laughed out loud at that, sitting on a bench by the water. Ezra dealing with me? The guy couldn't deal with a bar tab. I pictured him puffing up his chest, all talk, until Julian's letter landed and scared him quiet. Good. I texted Brielle back. Appreciate it. Sounds like they're digging their own hole. She sent a thumbs up and a photo group chat screenshots where Lillian whined about losing everything and Vivian plotted to fix this. Brielle had even signed an affidavit for Julian, swearing to what she'd seen, the secret talks, the plans to humiliate me, all of it. I tucked my phone away and kept walking, the lake path winding through trees starting to turn gold with fall. Their regrets didn't move me. Not Vivian's voicemails, not Lillian's email, not Ezra's empty threats. They weren't sorry they'd hurt me. They were sorry they'd lost their meal ticket. I kicked a pine cone down the path and thought about how quiet they'd gotten online lately. No more big posts, no more poor me updates, just silence, like they knew the game was up. I didn't check to confirm. I didn't need to. I was done with their stage. I turned my focus back to me, swimming in the lake most mornings, the water cold and clear, waking me up in a way coffee never could. I'd started reading too, picking up paperbacks from a little shop in town. Old mysteries, nothing heavy, just stories to lose myself in. I even signed up for Italian lessons with a guy named Marco, a retired teacher who laughed at my accent, but kept me going. Piano, piano, he'd say, slowly, slowly, and I liked that. No rush, no pressure. I'd hike too. Up through the olive groves above Como, the air smelling like earth and leaves, my legs burning by the end, but my head clear. I stopped by the water again, sat on a rock, and pulled out my notebook. They're yelling, I wrote. I'm not listening. This is my time now. I closed it, leaned back, and watched the sun dip lower, painting the lake orange. Vivian could leave 100 voicemails. Lillian could beg all she wanted. It didn't change the papers, the trust, the life I was building. I stood up, brushed off my jeans, and headed back to the hotel, the path familiar under my feet. My phone stayed quiet the rest of the day, and I liked it that way. I cooked a simple dinner. Pasta, some sauce from a jar, a glass of cheap wine, and ate on the balcony, the night settling in soft and cool. They'd regret it eventually, maybe even mean it someday, but I wasn't waiting around for that. I'd spent too long fixing their mistakes. Now, I was fixing me, swimming, reading, learning, walking, and it felt better than anything they'd ever given me. I finished the wine, set the glass down, and went to bed, the lake whispering outside. Their mess was theirs. I was free. Months slipped by in Lake Como, and I barely noticed the time passing until one day I looked at the calendar and realized it had been almost 6 since I'd left home. The divorce finalized quietly. No big courtroom drama. No shouting matches. Just a stack of papers signed and emailed to Julian from my little hotel desk. I didn't celebrate when he sent the confirmation. Didn't pop champagne or call anyone to gloat. I just sat there, staring at the lake through my window, and felt a kind of peace settle over me. Not loud or flashy, but steady, like the water outside. Lillian was gone from my life legally now, and her family with her, and I didn't need to rub it in. I'd won by walking away, not by fighting. I'd been building something new out here, piece by piece, and it was starting to feel like mine. I moved out of the hotel a couple months back, renting a small apartment in Milan instead, a one-bedroom place with a balcony, old wooden floors, and a view of a quiet street where kids played soccer until dark. It wasn't fancy, but it was enough, and I liked the hum of the city outside, different from Como's stillness. I bought it outright with some of the trust money, a clean break from the house back home I'd let Lillian keep in the settlement. I didn't want it anymore, too many memories, too much of their noise baked into the walls. Here, I could start fresh. I'd been working freelance too, picking up coding jobs for European clients, small stuff mostly, websites and apps, nothing that tied me down. It kept money coming in, kept my mind sharp, and let me set my own hours. I'd sit at my kitchen table, laptop open, a coffee going cold beside me, and lose myself in the work, the kind of focus I hadn't had in years. Back home, I'd always been interrupted, Lillian needing something, Vivian calling, Ezra dropping by unannounced. Now, it was just me, and I liked it that way. I wasn't hiding, though. I'd started going out, meeting people, letting life happen. I'd met Isadora at a market one Sunday, a local artist with dark eyes and a laugh that made me forget what I was saying mid-sentence. She sold paintings, bright, messy things full of color, and we'd gotten to talking when I stopped to look at one. You're not from here, she'd said, not a question, just a fact, and I'd nodded, told her I was American, starting over. She didn't pry, just smiled and asked if I'd ever tried painting. I hadn't, but I said yes anyway, and that turned into coffee, then dinner, then a few more dates. She wasn't Lillian, not even close. Isadora didn't lean on me, didn't expect me to fix her world. She just was, and that felt healthy, like a breath I didn't know I needed. We'd walk through Milan together, or pointing out old buildings, me stumbling over Italian phrases I'd picked up from Marco's lessons, and it was easy, no pressure. I didn't jump into anything serious too soon for that. But it was nice, casual, a reminder I could still feel something good. One afternoon, I logged back into social media, first time in weeks, just to see what was left of them. I'd unfollowed Lillian and her crew after the papers hit, but curiosity pulled me back. Her profile was public still, and there it was, a photo of her in Vivian's living room, boxes stacked around her, captioned, "New beginnings are hard, but I'm trying." I scrolled the comments, mostly pity from her friends, a few stay strong posts, but it was quieter than before, like the world had moved on. Vivian's page was the same, just a rant about ungrateful people that didn't name me but didn't have to. Mark was gone, no trace of him anywhere, probably off chasing someone else's wallet. Jonah, though, Brielle had texted me about him a while back. Got arrested for fraud, some scam he'd been running on the side. I wasn't surprised. He'd always had that sleazy edge. The trip that wasn't had fractured them all, left them scattered, while I'd landed on my feet. I closed the app, leaned back in my chair, and looked out at the street below. Kids were kicking a ball against a wall, laughing, and I felt steady. I didn't need to post about my new life, didn't need to shove it in their faces. I was living it. That was enough. I'd been hiking more lately, taking trains out to the countryside, walking trails through hills dotted with olive trees and little villages. I'd swim when I could, finding lakes or pools, the water cold and sharp against my skin. I kept up the Italian lessons too, getting better, enough to order food or chat with shopkeepers without sounding like a total idiot. Marco would clap me on the back, say, "Bene, Cole, bene," and I'd grin, feeling like a kid who'd aced a test. I read a lot books I'd grabbed from secondhand shops, mostly stories about people starting over, which hit close but not too close. It was a life I'd built without them, and it fit me better than the old one ever had. I thought about Lillian sometimes, not with anger, just a kind of distant wonder, how she'd gone from the woman I loved to someone I didn't recognize. I didn't hate her, didn't hate any of them, really. They'd made their choices, and I'd made mine. I stood up, grabbed my jacket, and headed out to meet Isadora for coffee. She'd texted earlier, saying she'd found a new spot near the cathedral, and I was game. The walk was quick, the air turning cool with fall, and I found her at a table outside, sketching on a napkin. "You're late," she teased, and I laughed, sat down, ordered an espresso. We talked about nothing big, her art, my coding, the weather, and it was perfect. I didn't need more than that. Back home, they were stuck, fractured, picking up pieces I'd stopped carrying. Here, I was whole, building something real, and it was mine. One morning in Milan, about 8 months after I'd left everything behind, I woke up to a letter slipped under my apartment door. It wasn't fancy, no official stamp, no lawyer's logo, just a plain envelope with my name scratched across it in Lillian's handwriting. I stood there in my boxers, coffee pot gurgling in the kitchen behind me, and stared at it on the floor like it might bite. I hadn't heard from her directly in months, not since that email begging to talk, which I'd ignored, and I wasn't sure I wanted to now. The air smelled like espresso and the bread I'd left on the counter, and outside, the street was waking up with the clatter of bikes and voices. I picked up the letter, turned it over in my hands, and felt a flicker of something, not anger, not curiosity, just a kind of tired wondering. I poured my coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and opened it slow, like I was peeling back a bandage. Inside was a single page, her words neat but shaky. "Cole, I know you don't owe me anything, but I need to say this. You were right. I was cruel. I got caught up in stupid games with Mom and Jonah and Mark, and I didn't see what it did to you. You didn't deserve any of it. I'm sorry. If you ever want to talk, here's my number." She'd scribbled it at the bottom, same old number I deleted from my phone a lifetime ago. I read it twice, then folded it up and set it on the table next to my mug. The coffee steamed in the quiet, and I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. Sorry. After all that, the dinners with Jonah, the texts to Mark, the way she'd let her family shove me out of my own life, she was sorry. I didn't feel a rush of anything, no relief, no bitterness, just a flat kind of calm. I'd spent years waiting for her to see me, really see me, and now that she had, it didn't change a thing. I wasn't that guy anymore, the one who'd run back to fix her tears. I stood up, walked to the sink, and looked out at the street below, kids chasing a dog, an old lady carrying a basket of flowers. I thought about calling her, just for a second, imagining her voice on the line, soft and pleading. But what would I say? It's okay? It wasn't. I forgive you? I didn't, not fully, not yet. I didn't hate her, didn't wish her harm, but forgiveness wasn't mine to give anymore. I'd moved on, and she was still back there, stuck in the wreckage she'd helped build. I took the letter, folded it again, and slid it into a drawer with some old receipts and a spare key out of sight, not thrown away, but not something I'd keep staring at either. I finished my coffee, rinsed the mug, and got dressed, jeans, a sweater, my boots scuffed from hiking. I had a job to finish today, a website for a local cafe owner, and then I was meeting Isadora for lunch. That was my life now, work I liked, people I chose, a rhythm that fit me. I grabbed my laptop bag, locked the door, and stepped out into the Milan morning, the air cool and sharp against my face. The letter stayed in my head as I walked, not heavy, just there, like a stone in my pocket. I wondered how she'd gotten my address. Brielle? Maybe. Or Julian. But it didn't matter. She'd reached out, said her piece, and I didn't owe her a reply. I bought the tickets for that Bermuda trip, paid for every detail, and when they tried to take it from me, I'd canceled it all. It wasn't just about the money, it was about me, about saying no for once and meaning it. I turned a corner, passed a guy playing guitar for coins, and kept going, the city buzzing around me. Lillian's apology didn't pull me back. It just closed a chapter I'd already finished writing. I got to the cafe where I liked to work, ordered another espresso, and set up my laptop by the window. The owner waved, called me Senior Cole, with a grin, and I nodded back, feeling at home. I opened my code, started typing, and let the world fade, lines of logic, clean and simple, no drama, no lies. An hour later, my phone buzzed, a text from Isadora. Lunch at noon? New place by the park. I smiled, wrote back, see you there, and kept working. That was my day quiet, mine, no one else's. I thought about the old me sometimes, the Cole who'd nod and pay and let them walk all over him. He was gone, not dead, just done. I'd taken that one-way ticket to Como, turned it into a life in Milan, and it was the best decision I'd ever made. I finished the job, sent it off, and headed to meet Isadora, the sun high now, warming the streets. She was waiting by a fountain, sketching on a pad, and waved when she saw me. You look happy, she said, and I shrugged, said, I am. We ate sandwiches on a bench, talked about our next painting, my next hike, nothing deep, just easy. Back home, they'd fallen apart, Lillian with her mom, Jonah in jail, Vivian ranting to an empty audience, but I didn't need to watch it. I'd heard enough from Brielle over the months, the family fractured, the trip a memory they couldn't rewrite. My story didn't end with a big showdown or a tearful reunion. It ended here, quiet, with me walking back to my apartment after lunch, the letter in the drawer where I'd left it. I didn't burn it, didn't frame it, just let it be. My name is Cole Archer, and I bought the tickets. I canceled them. I walked away. And now, I'm free, not loud about it, not showy, just living. I got home, kicked off my boots, and stood on my balcony, the city stretching out below. The sun dipped low, painting the sky gold, and I breathed it in. Peace. That's what it was. Pure, simple peace.